briefly just about sort of climate and the Scottish voluntary sector. I'm going to share a couple of stats on sort of readiness for taking action on climate change within the voluntary sector, just to kind of set this conversation in context a little bit. Then hand over to Megs, who's going to talk a little bit about the week and how you might use it in your own setting. Lucy and Maddie will talk from a personal perspective about how they found engaging with it and the impact that it's had on them and in our own work. And then we're hoping to do a kind of a bit of a general question and answer and a wider conversation about funding and support for climate action across the voluntary sector. So I was going to kick off by doing a quick Mentimeter, if people are up for that. So if I can get you to go to menti.com and to use the code that's written there, that would be great. I'm going to pop that into the chat and then I'll stop sharing this screen and start sharing another screen. That's the code, so menti.com, and then pop that code in. Okay. And I'm going to share the results screen. So hang on a second, I've got too many screen shares going on. Can people see that coming up? Yeah. So first question is, to what extent do you view taking steps to tackle the climate crisis as an important or unimportant part of the way that your organisation operates? Great. So lots of people there saying it is very or fairly important, which is great to see. We'll move on to the next question. So do you have any policies or procedures in place to reduce your carbon emissions or achieve net zero in your organisation? So 8 people on the call are yes and 1 person is no. So again, that's really nice to see. 9 people are yes and 1 person is no. Good. Okay, so we've got a pretty engaged group here on the call, which I think you'd probably expect if you're coming to a chat about climate change. And then the last question, so this is more of a kind of discursive one, just to get you to reflect on what's been the best conversation about climate change that you've had in the past year. And you can use your own definition of best. So that might be something that spurred loads of action, or it might just be something that's been really valuable to you. And who are we talking to and what made it feel valuable? Give you a wee minute to think about that, because it's a kind of a thoughtful question. Okay, great. So a net zero subgroup of trustees, young people at a recent conference, learning how enthusiastic they are. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to be at a couple of climate events recently, and it's been really lovely chatting to people. Stopping producing T-shirts. Interesting to see the values of people will be difficult to change. With the North Queensferry Development Trust wanting to set up a new climate group in Fife. Brilliant. Any others coming in there? Right, I'll leave it at that. So that's sort of an example of some of the conversations that folk have had. Now I'm just going to do one last share before I hand over to Meg. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint just to kind of set the context, those initial 2 questions that I asked. So SCVO runs a thing called the Third Sector Tracker in partnership with a number of other organisations. And this is it takes a representative sample of voluntary sector organisations. So there's sort of 500-600 organisations complete this on a quarterly basis. So we ask them various questions regularly, and then we add in a few topical questions sort of periodically. So in the last round of the tracker, so this is really up-to-date data, it's just been published, we asked 2 specific questions about the climate crisis. So these are the ones that you guys just answered on the Menti. So you can see that although the group on this call were pretty engaged and everybody felt that it was very or fairly important, if you look across the voluntary sector as a whole, there's still, what's that, 35% of organisations choosing that it's sort of neither important or unimportant to them. So you can see that there's still a chunk of the voluntary sector that are not yet kind of seeing how the climate crisis relates to their kind of core mission and the work that they do. And then the next question, the one about carbon reduction specifically, and I know that climate action is broader than just carbon reduction, but if you're looking at whether or not organisations have got policies and procedures in place, there's still quite a high percentage of the sector that don't. So for achieving net zero, 76% of the sector do not yet have any kind of policies and procedures in place around that. And if you're looking at reducing carbon emissions, 57% don't have anything in place around that. So those stats really are the reason that SCVO is kind of doing work in this space. So we've got a range of resources and tools, and we're linking up with initiatives like the climate hubs to try and make sure that the sector is supported to be able to take action. But today's event is about the kind of engagement tool that we've been using internally with staff. So I'm going to hand over to Megs now to take us through what is the week, how can you use it, and then we'll get a bit of a personal perspective from Lucy and Maddie. So over to you, Megs.
So thank you so much for that, Beth, and hi everyone. I'm Meg. I am the UK Activation Lead with The Week. I'm just going to do the awkward starting point and share my screen. So if I can just get a thumbs up if you're able to see the screen. Fab. So I'm just going to quickly put it into full mode. Okay, so as I said, I'm from The Week, and as Beth had said, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how The Week might be able to play a role for you in your different climate journeys, regardless of which stage you're at. Before I talk about The Week, I just wanted to take a wee moment to talk about some of the issues that some of us might be facing. So as Beth said, there's a super active group on here. So as we all know, the environment is breaking down at a super alarming rate and climate is changing really, really quickly. We're currently facing a multitude of climate crises around the world. And when you see all the doom and gloom in the news, it's really easy to fall into a sense of hopelessness, for many of us to feel a lot of climate anxiety, and often to feel a sense of powerlessness or even apathy. And we're literally witnessing the climate crisis play out right before our eyes. If you think about even over the last year, all the extreme weather events that we've seen in Scotland around the world, as a society, talking about it and normalising talking about it and addressing the climate crisis is something that we've still yet to normalise across the board. And there's lots of reasons why that might be. Some of the reasons can be, it can be quite overwhelming and quite abstract sometimes and polarising to start those conversations about climate. With something that's as omnipresent and is global and affecting all of us in so many different ways. If you've not started that climate journey, sometimes it's hard to know where to actually start with this conversation. If you're with an organisation, I've come from NGOs before myself, if you're with an organisation, sometimes it can be difficult to actually motivate and galvanise the people within your organisation that have the ability to navigate the red tape and make those substantial changes if climate isn't your primary focus. And I know that some of you have like a primary focus as climate and some of you don't on this call, but all of you are doing really, really vital and important work. And you've, as all of us do in non-profits and NGOs, we have very limited capacity and time. So with only so much capacity and time, how do you actually prioritize, what conversations to have and what actions to take? So with that in mind, enter The Week. So we're a tool that's based on social sciences. And we've been designed for a couple of different reasons. We're designed to help mobilise people who are aware of the climate crisis, but are yet to take action. And we're also there for people who are already super active to use to have those important climate conversations with the people around them that maybe aren't quite as engaged. So to talk a little bit more about The Week as a tool. So first of all, we're a group experience. So if you think about the social circles in your life, your friends, your colleagues, your neighbours, your local sports group, whatever that might be for you, The Week's been designed to bring those social groups together in so many aspects of life. So you've got your group, if you think about your social group in mind, and your group comes together 3 times over a week. So hence our name, The Week. We're a bit unoriginal with that. Each time to watch a documentary, and we take part in a guided conversation. So the episodes are designed to take you through an emotional U-shaped journey. And they're there to help create a sort of space for emotional safety to address and overcome eco-anxiety and apathy, and help people engage really joyfully and meaningfully in climate action. The documentaries are done in a way that helps bring all the different issues together, because there's not just one issue with climate change, there's so many different issues that need to be addressed, and they bring them together in a really comprehensive and human way. And after each episode, we set up a guided conversation, which creates space for opening up to the emotion of the crisis and not just looking to the facts of it. And it helps deepen that sort of sense of connection and bond with the group that's going through the experience. And this is really where the magic happens. So I'll talk a little bit more about the conversations in a wee minute. Before though, to dig in a little bit more to the episodes that you might go through. So like I say, 3 episodes over the course of a week, each taking you on an emotional U-shaped journey. So episode 1 is the descent. So we explore how bad it's going to get. And we'll invite you to calculate how old are you going to be in 2050? How old will some of the children around you that you care about be? And then we'll share what scientists tell us life will be like, likely be like, in 2050 if we don't turn it around. Episode 2 is the reckoning. And this is really an honest conversation about hope. So we try and avoid the superficial hope that comes from jumping straight from the problem to the solution. And we have a bit of a deeper dive into what's actually brought us to this crisis point and how we might actually turn it around. And episode 3 is looking at the adventure. So whether we like it or not, how humanity decides to deal with climate change is going to be the defining adventure of the next 30 years. And every few generations gets thrown a big challenge. And this is one of our challenges that we're facing. So instead of doing 15 minutes of me just rabbiting on at you about the week and how great it is, I thought I would give you a sneak preview of the first 5 minutes of episode 1 to give you a bit of a flavour of what you might expect if you go through the experience yourself. So if you can just give me a wee heads up if you're not able to hear the sound, but I'll play the video now for you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the week.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Disaster.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue dans The Week.
Hi and welcome to the week.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Willkommen zu The Week.
Glad you're here.
My name is Frank Johnson.
My name's Ashley McClure.
John and Holly Arbuckle at Singing Pastors Farm.
My name is Yancey, and I'm really glad that you're here.
Bah ça y est, c'est le premier épisode, donc je vous souhaite vraiment de vivre une belle expérience.
And so excited that you're settling in and hope that you enjoy this conversation and that it's really meaningful.
Mettez votre ceinture parce que ça va décoiffer pas mal aujourd'hui.
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome everyone. Right now you might be at home with your friends or your family, or maybe you're at work with your colleagues.
And yeah, it's exciting for us to picture you wherever you are with your group, and we're grateful that you decided to join us.
My name is Helen.
And I'm Frederick.
And we're married. We have 2 kids. They're 8 and 11. I'm French. Fred is from Belgium, where we met years ago, hence our accent, so please bear with us. And we now live in the United States.
And 3 years ago, we went through a profound shift. Before that, we sort of knew that things are in a bad shape when it comes to, the climate and the environment. But it felt abstract, like it didn't really feel like it had anything to do with our own lives. And plus it felt pretty depressing. So we kind of, did our best to tune it out and not engage with it. And then one day, good friends of ours came to visit. And we were impressed by their courage to really grapple with this. And it made it real for us. And so, when they left, I remember we looked at each other and they said, like, if they have the courage to do this, we should be able to do it too.
And so when they left, we had this urge to learn everything we could. We read and researched and watched documentaries. And along the way, we met amazing people who also have been on a similar journey to face this reality.
And for us, facing this was a real shock. We went on what could best be described like a U-shaped journey. At first, it brought up lots of, sadness and fear and anger.
But luckily we didn't get stuck there. We came out on the other side with lots of energy, with lots of clarity about what was important and what we wanted to do with our lives.
And after we went through this, we invited some of our friends to go on a similar journey. And, this was the pandemic, so we did it on video calls.
Hi, I'm Milan.
Yeah, I'm Frederick. And and they liked it so much that they invited some of their friends and then their friends. And it started to gather steam, and at some point we figured, let's turn this into films, make them free, and see what happens.
All right, y'all ready? Yep. 1, 2, 3.
And we met this wonderful film team, and long story short, here we are together with you to do this.
And it's not just us. Every day, everywhere around the world, thousands of people are coming to terms with what's happening. And in this film, you'll meet a few of them. 9 people we fell in love with and who said yes when we asked them if they would share with us and with you how they came to face this issue and what they decided to do about it.
So there's Ashley, a family doctor in California. There is Ophélie in France, who works in construction.
There's Frank in Memphis, Tennessee, who fights the pollution that has devastated his community. Scarlett, a student and activist in England, who saw the consequences of climate change in Kashmir, where her parents are from.
We have John and Holly, 9th generation farmers who made the leap to regenerative agriculture. And also Pauline in Paris, who rallied colleagues to make changes from within her workplace.
Yancy in Arizona, an ex-Marine and grandfather who left the oil industry to work for an electric truck company. And finally, we have Peter, or Peter, a German lawyer who for 25 years has had an impressive string of wins in court to protect our future. Some of them live in North America, the others in Europe. And we focused on these 2 continents because we have no lived experience elsewhere. So we didn't feel quite qualified to talk about Asia, South America, or Africa.
That being said, if you live outside of Europe or the US and you want to create a local version of The Week for where you live, please reach out because we'd love to help you make it happen.
Yeah. So Ashley, Frank, Pauline, Scarlett,
Peter, John, Holly,
Ophélie, Yancy, us, we're all really different. We're different in terms of our age, our jobs, our politics. Some of us are religious, others are not. We're different in how much or how little money we've got left at the end of the month. But we have one thing in common. Each of us had the courage to really look into the environmental breakdown that's happening and then figured out what we wanted to do about it.
And this is exactly what we're inviting you to do with us now. We're going to meet 3 times over the course of a week. That's why we called it The Week. And each time we'll start with a 1-hour film, and then we'll invite you to have a conversation with your group for something like 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen again. So I hope that's given you a little bit of a flavour about what you might expect if you decide to go through the experience of yourself or bring more people together to go through it. So the conversations themselves are, really where the magic happens. I said before that that's really where the excitement and the joy and the meaning comes out when people come together through the week. So one of the really great things about the week is no facilitator is needed. Even for the conversations after the movies, we do all the work for you. So after each of the films, like for the sort of start that you saw there, we set up a guided conversation for you using a pre-prepared video that's tailored to spark conversations in 4 different areas: in the workplace, at home, at campus, and in your faith networks. So the conversations you might have in your local church could be completely different to the conversations you would have in your workplace, for example. And we hear a lot of feedback from participants, and a lot of them say that for them, it's sometimes the first time that they've sat down and engaged with colleagues, friends, family, etc. at such a deep level about climate. We hear quite often actually of tears being shed, laughter being shared, but also the biggest piece of feedback that we get is a real sense of relief that it's finally okay to start talking about climate amongst your social groups, and share both your worries and your hope. So although the documentaries are there to kind of bring everything together in sort of one comprehensive way, really where you see some real action coming out is having those meaningful conversations. And I know that the SCVO is going to talk a little bit about that as well. So I've talked a little bit about, you know, why the week exists and who the week is, and I've given you a little bit of a flavour, but I just want to talk a little bit about what that means for you in practice. So you can organise the week pretty much however you want. You can organise it in person or online. You could do a hybrid of it as well. You can have big groups, small groups, at faith networks, at home, at work, with colleagues, friends, family. Really, the possibilities are endless. We hear of so many different people that go through the experience. We've had groups of 370 managerial professionals go through the experience together, right the way down to hearing back from a couple of friends sitting on a sofa taking part in the journey. So here's just some photos and examples of all the different ways that people have kind of coordinated and organised sessions around the world. And I just wanted to give, I know that the SCVO is going to talk a little bit about what it's meant for them and what they've gone through, but I wanted to give you a couple of examples of other NGOs and non-profits that have used the week before. So the first two are in France, and they are A Rocha and Iglesia Verte. Iglesia Verte translates to Green Church. And they're two non-profits that are focused specifically engaging Christian audiences around environmental actions. So in February of this year, they decided to co-organise a session of the week, and they wanted to offer it to their volunteers and to their larger community. And they actually had over 170 people go through the week together over 1 week. Yona, who was one of the organisers, she said that the aim of the session was to help their community discover the week is a really easy to use tool where you don't need to be an expert, you don't need to be a facilitator, and yet you're still able to run a really powerful awareness workshop with your family, your church community, or your workplace. And at the end of the experience, they decided to run a quick poll, and out of the 170 people that went through it, 92% said that they really appreciated the experience, and 72% said that they were likely to organise a session themselves in the near future. The One campaign, you might have heard of them. They're a non-profit advocacy organisation. They're based both in the UK and internationally. They tested the week last year, and this year they're looking at how they can bring the week to more of their activists around the world. They kind of saw the use of the week being twofold. So first of all, internally, they saw the week as a tool that they can use to galvanise their colleagues around a new global activist cohort that they're creating, where they want to do some focus on climate change. And historically, that's not been their key focus that they've worked on. So they saw it as a really good tool that they could kind of like bring colleagues together to help them, everybody get on the same page about the urgency of addressing the climate emergency, but also that sort of sense of hope and adventure of kind of going down that road. And externally, they see it as it could be a useful tool for activists to bring more people into the movement, almost like giving their activists special missions. They're thinking about how at the end of episode 3, they can add on their own One campaign specific guidance to help activists have conversations that would ultimately lead them to recruiting more activists into their movement. And last year, they decided to run a test both internationally and at the University of Bradford, and they got really positive feedback from both the experiences. And really the week, the skeleton is you meet 3 times over a week and you have conversations, but you can really use the week however you want to support your initiatives in whatever way works for you. That's just the sort of starting point, and then you can just kind of build around it. So I always say blue sky thinking, think outside the box when you're thinking about how you might want to use the week. This is one of my favourite examples. It's from Germany, and it's 3 organisers who turned the week into a collective experience for their entire hometown. I'm so sorry, I'm going to absolutely butcher this name, but it's Neurenkirchen Seelschied, which is a small town just outside of Cologne. What they decided to do was they decided to organise multiple sessions of the week over 3 weeks in 7 different locations around their town. And the aim of the week was twofold. First of all, to bring the communities together all across their town to have these really important conversations about climate, but also to help people who are coming together to discover new places in their town that they might not necessarily have visited if it hadn't been for this experience. So a couple of examples of where they held the week is at their local bookshop, at the local hotel, at the Unpackaged shop. You know, so it's a great way to they found it a great way to bring people together, but also to bring people together in new and exciting places around their town. So in practice, I've given you a couple of examples, but you know, how do you actually get started with the week? It's super straightforward to organize a session. Literally everything that you need to organize a session sits on our website. And as I said, because no facilitator is needed, anyone with an internet connection can get started. You just need to visit our website, which is theweek.oo. You fill in your details, you decide who you want to invite, pick your dates, and you're pretty much ready to go. We'll do all the work for you, including set up the conversation guides. And again, here's a few more photos of different teams or different groups around the world who've organised the week in various different places, both in and out of the workplace. Beyond organising a session, if you want to think about, well, how can I go from organising 1 or 2 sessions to how I can use the week strategically to engage my community, my workplace, my network around climate and roll out the week and have those important conversations in various different contexts. I'd love to have a chat with you. I don't just love chatting on webinars, I love chatting in general. So feel free to organise a virtual cup of tea with me and we can have a chat about how the week could support your specific work. You can either use the QR code here or pick a time that suits you on my Calendly, or alternatively, you can just drop me an email, megan@theweek.oo, and we can organise a time to chat in the next couple of weeks and we can talk about how it can be of use. But I hope that gives you a bit of a whistle-stop tour in 15 minutes about what the week is, how you might be able to use it, give you some food for thought about the different ways that you might be able to use it to support your own initiatives. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass you over to the SCVO, and we're going to have someone from the SCVO, Lucy, who's going to talk about how she found it, organising it in the workplace. So thank you so much, and I hope you find that interesting.
Hello, I'm Lucy. I'm marketing manager at SCVO. I don't have any slides. I just thought I'd chat about what worked for us, and I wanted to give you maybe 2 slightly different angles that overlap my own personal experience of the week as a human who inhabits the planet with my own, responsibility for climate, and also as someone who leads a team in an organisation, so in my professional capacity, and what it was like for me to arrange for my team to take part in something like this in an organisation that has a strategic priority to help to tackle the climate and nature emergencies. So I took part in the week as a trial because I'm part of the Climate Crisis Working Group. And I came into it, I didn't have any expectation. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I just knew that it had been recommended. And if I'm really honest, initially I did wonder if the time commitment was going to be worth it, because I work in a busy team with a really packed schedule. We're really stretched all of the time. But I thought, right, as a member of our climate group, I really have to get involved and show willing to be involved in things like that. And I'm so glad that I did, because I can honestly say it's had more of an impact on me, I think, than any other, it's not training, but any kind of session that I've ever taken part in before. So Megan talked about the week being like a U-shaped journey. I can confirm this to be true. So episode 1 was so impactful that after it I felt sad, stressed, worried, completely overwhelmed. And I think that's where this group conversation, guided conversation, comes in and is really useful, because it meant that as a group you had this kind of safe space to be able to have the conversations about what you've just watched and about honestly how scary it is, but there's something reassuring about the fact that every single person in that group felt completely the same. We're all different people, all coming at it from different angles with different experiences, but to a person, we felt stressed and overwhelmed and kind of wondering what to do next. Fortunately, it's not all doom and gloom. Films 2 and 3 are much more hopeful. They help us to see that there are changes that we can make, there are things that we can do, and they're inspiring. And I came out of those, both personally and professionally, I would say, feeling engaged, inspired. I was excited, and I was ready to go and make changes. And I was ready to go and make changes personally and professionally. And I really felt honestly compelled to do that properly, where I hadn't really before. So I'd done things that loads of people are doing. Like, I felt great because I put things in the recycling. This really like made me want to do more than that. So things like where our food comes from, like in my house, we were eating meat every day because that's what we've always done. We don't do that anymore. Like, our diet is now predominantly, not completely, but predominantly vegetarian. I insulated my roof. Like, this is really practical stuff that I was driven to do. Insulated the roof, changed my pension investments. We were getting a new car and decided to take the plunge and get the electric car rather than diesel. And I know you don't all know me, but a big one for me was a 6-month no buying new clothes challenge. Like, that was a big one for me. And I did it, but now I'm thinking more about like where the things that I buy come from, where I shop, how I shop, what kind of things I buy. In a professional environment, I felt all of a sudden more empowered to use my voice at work. So immediately after taking part, there'd been a bit of conversation amongst the operational managers about, can we really get involved with something like this? We're all so busy all of the time. And there was a lot of pushback on, we just don't have time to take part in something that takes place over a week and it takes such a time investment. I just went ahead, which is it's not the type of thing that I would normally do. I just went ahead and arranged it for my own team. So set the time aside in our diaries and we went ahead and we did it. I also wrote to all of our operational managers and said, I really think this is something that we should be doing. And knowing the type of pushback I was going to get from them, I was ready with arguments as to why it was something we should take part in. And I understood, where they were coming from because I'd been in that place myself before. But I now felt ready and empowered to do it. Taking part in it myself as a trial helped me to realise I needed to give my own team permission to let other things go so that they could take part in it. And I'm glad I did, because again, every single person who took part in the week told me what a powerful experience it had been. And I now see the impact that them taking part in the week has had in their work and in their own attitudes to our work. So we're now talking and actively having conversations within our marketing team about how we can make an impact on SCVO's goals towards supporting our sustainability aims. So we're talking about procurement, we're talking about the language we use around climate, we're talking about at the gathering, what kind of merchandise we have and what kind of advertising that we do. It's just much more front and centre in what we're doing, and it's a constant part of our conversation. There are a couple of practical suggestions I could make if you are going to go ahead and take part in the week. One, we set aside 3 sessions over 2 working weeks. but still within 7 days. It just made it a bit more palatable for people. So we did it Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, just spread it out a bit across 2 working weeks for people. We blocked out 2 hours for each session rather than the hour and a half. It just allowed for tech fails or coming in and out of the room, extra discussions if people wanted to have them, time to grab a cup of tea between watching the video and then coming back to have a chat. The break between session 1 and 2, I think, was quite important. Like I've said, session 1 is really heavy. It's a lot to digest. So I think people welcomed having that extra time to reflect and think between session 1 and 2. And I would also say it was good to have a relatively small group. That just allowed us to have a good, meaningful discussion amongst ourselves. And if you could, we did ours all online because we work predominantly from home. If you can avoid going down the route of people watching the videos at times that suits them, I would suggest do that, like have people watch it at the time you've set aside, just to avoid other things getting in the way. And that's it. I feel like I've talked enough. I think Maddie's going to add her own perspective.
Thanks, Lucy. I did it, I think it was before Lucy did it with our team. I did it as part of, I think it was our digital evolution manager, John, got a group of us together to do a test as well to find out how it would work within the realms of what we do as well. And very similar to Lucy, I think that part of it is that emotional journey. The first one for me was a real confirmation of how bad things are, and it's not just hype that we see in the news. It's not just doom and gloom. Like, these things are actually happening. The world is on fire, and it is that just, it sets the context for where you kind of go next, and it is really difficult. Part of the thing about the week that it did for us, though, was it gives guidance about how to have these conversations. That guided conversation gives the support to have those conversations, so you're not just left watching this going, oh my God. There is that guide that's there, that support to hold you in place, to give you the safe space to have the discussion. And then as the two were talking about, you come out this YouTube, so you're given the evidence of what's actually happening, what you can do, and then the kind of the inspiration of this is what you can do. And for me personally, I moved to the north of Scotland during the pandemic. I moved from a city out into the country, and my husband and I have changed our lifestyle a lot. We've changed the way that we do things. We have a polytunnel. We grow a lot of our own veg. There's things that we were starting to do a little bit in the city, dabbling, that when we moved out, we thought, right, let's go at this with a lot more gusto, if you like. But again, as Lucy said, we were kind of, my word would be fits and starts. So we tried a couple of things. We'd got going a couple of, our cabbages were amazing, our potatoes were terrible. So we'd had a shot at a couple of these things, but we hadn't really gone at it wholeheartedly. We'd given it a go, but hadn't really done much. And watching this from me, or participating in the week, really started to cement some of the things that I can actually do and that I wanted to do. It changed a lot of I need to do this. This needs to happen to, I want to do this. I want to be part of this. I want to make that change. So it had a shift in my language from moving from needs to wants, that kind of way of actually talking about it. It also gave me a way to frame conversations with friends and family, so not going straight into that climate conversation about everything's awful, I'm powerless, but to actually be able to say, there are things, people are out there doing things. There are people who are farming differently or producing food differently, or, if we change our diet, if we go vegan once a week, actually what this means, because for me, the week does give, it's backed up by evidence, it's backed up by facts, it's physical information, articles you can go and read, more information you can go and get. And for me, that really helped take the opinion out of it and actually gave me tools to have these conversations, whereas before I was a lot more passive, and that I would just let the conversations go around me, and the person with the loudest voice, I would just sit there and go, yeah, I don't think that's right, but they're quite loud, I'll let them away with it. So actually just being able to go, I'm not sure that is right. I took part in this thing that said blah, blah. So it gave me a kind of a thing to direct people to, which was really helpful. And within a family setting, it helped me talk about, I was kind of just saying earlier about beyond recycling. It's not just recycling. There's so much more that we can be doing, that we are doing, and recognizing that as a family, we were actually doing quite a lot. And then thinking about when we started to put it into that kind of perspective of think of the children. There's a phrase, if any of your Simpsons fans, there's a phrase in it where they go, think of the children, everybody. But actually doing that as an activity, like you're asked to think about your nieces or your nephew or your grandchildren or your children. And my niece is 21. And then when I started to think about where she's at now with, she's at university, she's in year 3, where will she be? The job that she might do doing geography, what that job looks like now, a job she might do with geography degree, kind of 5, 10 years down the line, 15 years, 20 years, that job might be completely different with regards to what she'd be doing. So thinking about what does that mean for her, and then helping to use that as a conversation starter with some of my friends who are a bit more about, well, what can I do about it? So they're a bit more on the passive side as well, saying, well, I've got my electric car, or I've recycled as much as I can to say, actually, there's more, think about your nieces, your nephews, think about what that does and what that might mean for them. So trying to frame it in a different way was really helpful. And there was kind of 2 key things that I actually did out of this. The first thing was, I am very similar to Lucy with the clothes buying. I'm making us out to be absolute fashionistas in SCVO. It's not true. We're all buying clothes and going crazy for clothes. I have I've got a penchant for trainers and jumpsuits, and decided if I was going to buy these things, it all going to be secondhand, not going to buy anything new, going to be secondhand and under a certain amount of money. So if it was going to buy something, then I was going to go down the secondhand route. I was brought up with that as a child. Mum used to take us to charity shops, so actually bringing that back in. My sister's a massive advocate for it, and that kind of idea of the antidote to fast fashion is that what's the opposite of that? So actually thinking a lot more around that. And I got my husband is 55. I got his granny's electric sewing machine that we still had, who knows how, out of our garage, that's moved with us several houses. Got it serviced it myself, managed to fix it, got it going, and have started to make my own clothes and take up my own clothes and repair my own clothes. So things like that, which I'd always quite fancied doing, but I'd never quite got it off the ground. So that was a big thing for me. And knitting as well. I actually took up knitting. I have one friend who's a very keen knitter, and she finds it very relaxing. And I was like, I'd like to be doing something. What can I be doing? And knitting was a big thing. And it turns out there's actually quite a lot of knitters in SCVO. Once you put that out there, people were going, wow, I've been knitting for years. And I was going to show you my actual thing. It's not finished, and it's a very first attempt. I started to knit I love a massive jumper, and they cost a fortune if you're going to buy a massive jumper. So I've started to knit a very large, that's it inside out, you can't quite see it, massive jumper. It's basically 4 squares that I've turned around and sewn together. And but it's also thinking about the yarn that I'm buying and where it's coming from, and that just thinking about that bigger process, and not just going into Home Bargains and thinking, oh, this is on sale for £1, but actually putting quite a lot of effort into it. And that, I think, is the ultimate thing for me, is that mindset change about starting to think about, where is this coming from? What's the impact of this? And what's the long-term impact of what's actually, of the choice, that quick choice that I'm making now? What does that then mean for my niece? She's going to be the one that's going to have to cope with the consequences of me just making that quick choice, I think. And that for me was the really kind of the big thing, to be able to put that out and to talk to my family about it. And I found that really powerful, I think, for me, certainly was a big deal. So that's my very personal experience. So hopefully you're getting a lot from that as well. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you, Megs, and thanks for the week. It's been great.
Thanks, Maddie. Thanks, Lucy, and thanks, Megs. Thanks for sharing so vulnerably kind of how it's impacted on you guys personally. That was really, really lovely to hear. So I'm going to stop the recording. If you're watching us on YouTube, well done for making it this far.